Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily with Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to use the promo code FSD20 for a 20% discount on the products over at fantasyguru.com.
Check it out. It's a couple of guys who survived unscathed on Thursday Night Football. Kyle Elfrink and Ray Flowers with you. It is Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com. Ray, I'm feeling good this morning. Did you make it through without any bumps and bruises last night?
I did, though I'm angry this morning, as a lot of other people are, I'm sure. NFL's got some explaining to do this morning, Kyle.
Oh, come on. Ray, what would you have done differently? If Joe Burrow had been on the injured list with a wrist, would anything have changed?
Yeah, it would have.
Really?
And not to your point, Joe Burrow doesn't go from quarterback 7 to quarterback 23. Like, it's not. But would I have told someone to play Jared Goff or CJ Stroud over him? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I would have. Absolutely. With Higgins out, with the defense against the Ravens, I absolutely would have.
If he'd been listed as questionable with a wrist, you would have benched him.
And here's the thing, okay? Let's just dive right into it if we're going to talk about it. The NFL's got a huge problem. Huge problem. Someone sent me a note this morning, or last night, excuse me, and they were pissed off because they lost $850 on a bet because they assumed Joe Burrow was healthy. You can't have an injury report, cannot have an injury report, and have it not be reflective of what's going on. The team said Burrow was fine. He wasn't on the injury report. And then, because people were asking me yesterday, I saw a video on Twitter, and it's like, look, he's not injured. The team's saying he's not injured. He's not on the injury report. I can't do my job if I don't have the proper information. I can't tell people, give the right advice if I don't have the information. People go out and bet money on this. It's one thing to say I lost my fantasy matchup this week and I got $25 in this league. People bet hundreds, thousands of dollars on these games. The NFL has to, and this is something you and I have talked about for as long as we've known each other. The injury reports are a joke. They're an absolute joke. And I don't understand how the league can be in bed with gambling, as they inarguably are, and allow this to continue. We're talking millions and millions and millions of, maybe even more than that, on a weekly basis are bet, and we don't have the data to make the proper bets. I think it's absolutely awful.
So putting him on the injury report, it appears, would change things for people. It would change nothing for me. If I were a gambler and I was putting money down, we all knew about the video. That was known before last night's game. Like, that information was out there. It was deleted, but it was known. I don't even follow Twitter. I don't even care about this stuff. And Ray, I knew it, that there had been video of Joe Burrow with a brace and then it was removed. So that was information. It wasn't official, but it was information. Gamblers often make bets on unofficial information. So to a gambler, don't complain to me. That was there. And again, if Joe Burrow is questionable with a wrist, am I changing my bet on the Bengals? Newsflash, every single quarterback taking a snap this weekend is dealing with something. Every single one. Rib, shoulder, elbow, knee, every single one. Ray, I guess we could all list them as questionable and then we'd be happy? Is that what we want?
Well, no. But because again, we've talked about this for years. The NFL has a legitimate problem with this. They've always had a problem with this. They made it more complicated by getting rid of one of the injury designations, right? It used to be 4, now there's 3. They've made this, they've made it into a joke. We've talked about it. Tom Brady was on the injury report for 5 years, never missed a game. Like, the NFL has never cared about this. As we get more sophisticated, as information is more readily available to us, as billions of dollars are spent each year, DFS, gambling, all of that, the NFL has to be better with this, because if they're not, Mike Florio wrote about this over at PFF, and he's right. Someone eventually is going to sue the NFL, and I don't see how they're not going to win, because when you start talking about billions of dollars being invested, the league supporting the gambling, the league promoting the gambling, you have to have a level playing field, or you can't have it.
If I'm an investor in a business, Facebook, Meta, Google, whatever it is, if I'm an investor, do they tell me every day who's at work? No. And if people aren't showing up or not doing their job, they don't tell me that every day.
True.
I find out every quarter what's going on. I can't sue Meta. I'm an investor. I got money riding on this business. Bring it on, says the NFL. You want to sue me? No way. Is that what Mike Florio's saying?
Yeah, and he's right. Anyone can sue.
Oh, yeah. Anybody can sue, Ray.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I can sue him. That doesn't mean I win.
But I know we're taking opposite sides here, but don't you have a problem
well,
with
here's
this?
the thing. I'm sorry. If you're a gambler, tough luck.
Okay. What about fantasy?
I consider that, hey, you're playing odds. Tough luck. And couldn't the Bengals, Ray, can't they make the argument, hey, he got injured on the play before that?
On the same exact area that was injured before the game?
He got hit. He got hit, and that
made it worse. They thought he was going to be okay.
Who is to say, like, that's a fair argument if you're the Bengals. And for those who don't know, the NFL is now investigating it. They'll give him a $10,000 fine, $50K, whatever. But it doesn't rise to the level of me seeing my blood pressure jump. It's like, who cares?
Well, you could go on the other side of things too, where the Bengals could say everyone on their team is hurt, right? and then the Ravens look like it's gonna be a cakewalk, and the spread grows from 3 points to 9 because everyone on the Bengals is hurt and no one's really hurt. So again, I don't know what the answer is. I do know when there's video of a guy with a brace on, and Florio went through the whole thing after the game. Where was Joe Burrow? He didn't talk to the press. Why? The head coach.
A lot of injured guys usually don't.
Yes, but it's a wrist injury. He can't sit there and talk. Come on. There was no report. He's going to a hospital. Like, come on.
Getting treatment, Ray.
Yeah, right.
I mean, did Mark Andrews talk after last night's game?
Mark Andrews' career is over. No, it's season over. But the head coach saying that, and here's the real problem. The head coach said there's no issue. If there's no issue, why is the dude wearing a brace on the bus? Like, you say he's got a wrist sprain, we think he's fine, cool. But when the head coach comes out and says there's no issue, and there's video of the guy with an issue, we have a problem. Because then we have then in a best case scenario, the coach is a moron and doesn't know what's going on with his players. In a worst case scenario, he's lying. And that's an issue. If the team doesn't say anything, right? He's hurt, we're not going to say anything. Okay, fine. But you can't have a guy seemingly injured, then have the team say he's not injured, then have video of him being injured. It just doesn't work. You all got to be consistent one way or the other, and they weren't.
Maybe, Ray, he'd been typing a lot on Wednesday and had a little carpal tunnel going on. You get that. You type like 20,000 words a day. I'm sure on some occasions, Ray, you've probably donned one of those wrists.
I have. I actually have.
Yeah. I don't care. I'm sorry. I can't. I guess people will bark about this and yell about this. I don't really care. Come on. Again, the information was there. Did you need the Bengals to say wrist questionable? Because he saw the information. He saw the video.
Kyle, like, again, this is not, like I said, I wouldn't have dropped Joe Burrow 15 spots in my rankings. Like, it wouldn't have been drastic, but I think a lot of people
would not have bet on the Bengals if Joe Burrow was listed as questionable with a wrist?
No. I think they would have not bet on the Bengals if they knew that there was a wrist issue that was significant to the point where he was having a problem holding the football. Then absolutely. Now, was it the hit that did? I mean, everyone saw the video. He couldn't even, like, it was no, he couldn't.
Well, and that's part of it, Ray, that he was good enough through a quarter and a half. Looked fine.
Looked okay.
Throwing passes, everything. I mean, the Bengals looked like the Bengals. Mm-hmm. And then on that one throw, which followed the hit by Clowney, it didn't work. Yeah. I mean, they can say this was not the first snap of the game or the first throw of the game where he's like, oh, my God, my arm, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. This was after he took a hit. It was after he'd thrown, what did he end up with, 15 passes? I don't know, whatever the number was. Okay. Logically, it probably did happen in the game. It probably did happen in a moment.
And back to the point you made at the start, guys enter every game hurt, right? Like, everyone's hurt. And, let's say Burrow was hurt, but he thought he could manage it. He was doing okay, right? Like you said, he took a hit and it wasn't okay anymore. I mean, so this whole thing at the end, wrapping it up, right? At the end, there's no answer, right? Because the guy's on the injury report. He's not on the injury report. The team says he's hurt. The team doesn't matter once you get tackled, right? It's information. And again, in my world, in the fantasy world, it's information I would have liked to have known. I would have dropped him a couple spots in the rankings. Wouldn't have been significant. Still would have had him as a bottom end QB1, but I would have told people to play golf. I would have told people to play strat. I would have changed by a couple of spots. And it doesn't sound in the grand scheme like that's a big deal. But for the people listening, for the people watching, it's a big deal. And so, you never know who's going to get hurt and how the game's going to go anyway. Burrow could have toughed it out and thrown for 290 and 3. And then after the game, had his hand in a bucket. And I don't know if I can play next week. Like, you don't know. But just it's an uneasy feeling around the whole thing, the way it played out.
The Bijan Robinson thing is much more irritating from earlier.
That's another one. Yeah, good call.
Mm-hmm. That one, and really my major aggravation with that is where the hell was the reporting? Mm-hmm. Like, I still can't get over that. Like, we have sideline reporters and nobody even mentioned anything about Bijan Robinson until the third quarter. Like, that's what I got a problem with, right? I'm not angry at the NFL. I'm angry at Fox or whoever the hell.
We have sideline reporters that they make up stories.
Yeah.
Krista Thompson's making, oh my gosh. Whew.
Which is not the first time she said that. I don't know. I guess it got picked up. And
but like, holy cow, Kyle. Jeez.
I mean, is anyone shocked?
No, but I'm saying
I hate to crap on my profession, but literally the most useless job in broadcasting, sideline reporters.
Yeah.
It's useless.
But it's like, we're analysts. She's a reporter. You're supposed to be reporting,
I know.
Yeah, it's like, she wanted to say that in the
why didn't
studio.
you just say, hey, guys, I didn't get to talk to the coach. We're not going to do a thing in the third quarter.
Yeah. Or let's pivot.
No one's going to miss it.
Yeah.
Like, does anybody wait through the halftime to hear what Mike Tomlin said as he was jogging off the field? It's like a 30-second discussion. I don't need the head coach to tell me, we got to be better on third down and we're just committing dumb penalties. Like, I watched the first half. It's totally useless.
I never thought when they added that to the broadcast, I've been missing that the first 30 years of my life. Never once for a second did I care. You're right.
Great for injuries. And sometimes, and that's it. If a guy's on the sideline and you hear something or, they're checking out and, he went to the Blues, that's fine. But useless things like halftime interviews, give me a break. It's pathetic. It's joke. Okay, we've already eaten like 13 minutes on this pod, Ray. We got more on Thursday Night Football. Joe Burrow was indeed not the only injury that we've got to talk about. We're going to get you set for the rest of Week 11. Rich Maletto is stopping by. We have not had Rich with us through the first set of episodes here on Fantasy Sports Daily, so looking forward to that. He will give his thoughts on the upcoming Sunday. And then tomorrow, college football week number 12 gets rolling. Perhaps the guy who will go number 1 in the NFL draft, Caleb Williams, the quarterback out of USC, could be his final college game tomorrow, which is kind of sudden. I didn't realize that, but if indeed he's going to the pros, he's not going to play in a bowl game. So tomorrow could be the last game for him as USC takes on UCLA. Chris Rose is going to drop in. We should also promote, Ray, our buddy Armando Marsal up on YouTube. He's got some thoughts on Week 11 as well.
Yeah, if you go to youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, where a lot of you are right now, we're debuting new pieces of the puzzle, if you will, at Elite Plus Network. So if you go to the playlist section there, you'll see Tyler Beaker, who had a couple of thoughts on Thursday Night Football, some bets that you could have placed. Armando's up today with a call for DFS this weekend. It's a free call, kind of a peek behind the curtain for those people that don't subscribe at fantasyguru.com. A running back he is looking forward to using this week and he thinks you should use this week. So check it out, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork for his call.
Okay. FSD 20, by the way, 20% off all the packages. Use it over at fantasyguru.com and get cheaper access to all of our great content, whether you're a football fan, NFL, college, baseball. Ray's still right in there. He's covering free agency as it happens. Not much happening right now, but as it happens. Hockey, NBA, PGA, EPL, all those things covered over at fantasyguru.com. Ray, let's dig into Thursday. Bengals lose. They lose Joe Burrow. That was a game, but you bring in Jake Browning, who, that was his, in effect, first ever NFL experience. He didn't embarrass himself. I thought he was okay. Mm-hmm. But Ray, you got to worry now about the Bengals, don't you? I mean, Jamar Chase got the touchdown last night, but 2 catches, 12 yards. Tyler Boyd did nothing. T. Higgins, who knows about his status? I guess a Joe Mixon owner is probably happy to know they're going to get a lot of work, both rushing and receiving from Joe Mixon. But if Burrow is missing any sort of extended time, this is a killer for this Bengals offense.
Yeah, it's bad. And, Mixon's been getting a lot of work and struggling for real fantasy relevance most weeks with Burrow. He's going to get a lot of work without Burrow, and it's not likely to lead to fantasy relevance. We don't know how much time Burrow's going to miss, if any. I mean, it's possible he's back the next week. It certainly is possible. But given what we saw last night and everything right now, we have to be very concerned about his at least short-term outlook there. And, the Bengals, they fell to 5-5 last night, and their season's basically over. I mean, it's possible, right? But they're in a bad spot now. And you laid out the guys that are dealing with injuries. And, this, I think, is an example of something you and I have talked about for a long time. Stacking in the DFS game, fine, right? We're doing 1 week. If it doesn't work, cool. Yeah. When you start talking about, adding quarterback, wide receiver, which people love doing in the fantasy game. Joe Burrow goes out. We saw what happened to Jamar Chase last night. So I'm not saying that you can't win and do this. I'm Scott Fishbowl. I ended up with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, right? It's how it played out. It can be a boon to your fantasy game, but we're about ready to see what could happen when you do that in the negative sense, because it does not seem like Burrow's going to be suiting up next week.
Yeah, I think next week's very doubtful for Burrow. We'll just have to see. They're calling it a sprained wrist, by the way. But again, I guess Ray and nobody else trusts them, so who knows what he's really dealing with. But we'll have to see with the Bengals. By the way, Joe Mixon reached 100 total yards for just the second time, rushing and receiving, second time this year. Both games have come against the Ravens and the 49ers. So, yeah, right. People want to play matchups and all this stuff. If you got studs, just play them. You don't need to get cute. Even though Joe Mixon has not had a good season, his two best games are against probably the two best defenses that the Bengals have played. On the Ravens side, Ray, Lamar Jackson was a little more appropriate for the fantasy player. 2 passing touchdowns and 50 some odd yards rushing. They had injuries too. Jackson was limping the entire second half. He had a bit of an ankle issue. He'll probably tough it out, try to play. But again, every time we get to the double-digit weeks with Lamar Jackson, we got to worry about getting him to the finish line. The biggie, though, is Mark Andrews. Ray, done for the season. I mean, the Ravens, and I don't know if we're dealing with a high ankle sprain or a broken ankle, but that's a huge loss. Isiah Likely becoming very popular, I think. He did nothing last night. Andrews leaves that game. I think it was 2 targets for Likely, no catches. But, Ray, I would suspect people who are kind of groveling in the 11th, 12th, 13th spot in their league at tight end, they're probably looking at Isiah Likely for next week. Yeah,
and, this is the way it goes, right? In Scott Fishbowl, who I just mentioned, that's a tight end premium league. I looked this morning up. I sat on Isiah Likely till Halloween, did nothing. He was my second tight end. I was all right, I'm going to wait. If something were to happen to Andrews, and then I dropped him in a couple of weeks later. That's how it goes, right? But Likely figures to do a close approximation of Mark Andrews, right? I can't say he's as much of a green zone threat, right, or anything like that, but he's an extremely dynamic talent. We've seen him flash at times. We know that the offense, even with the new OC, they want to throw the ball to the tight end position at times. So Isiah Likely becomes a very intriguing tight end pickup. Totally right on that, Kyle. And as you said, maybe 2 weeks ago, the tight end position's been messy, but it hasn't been as bad as we thought it would be before the season began. There's been viable options to pick up on a pretty frequent basis with guys that we can look at and say, this guy's got a legitimate chance to score 8 to 10 points every week.
Other takeaway here, Ray, is Keaton Mitchell. Been a big topic in fantasy circles for the last couple of weeks. Last week, 4 touches. I'm sure going into last night, people were wondering, do I play him? Do I not? They got 9 touches, which I've said all along for weeks now. Like, what are you hoping for? 10 touches? Mm-hmm. It's kind of what you're hoping for. You got the touches that realistically, Ray, I think that's all you could expect in this offense, but he didn't do anything. What's alarming is this was a blowout in the second half, and he still wasn't getting touches. Furthermore, 2 touchdown runs, Gus Edwards, of course, from 3 yards out. No one can be upset, I don't believe, with Keaton Mitchell. Like, the warnings were all there. Ray said them. I said them. Some people didn't say them. But, Ray, this is what it is. People can't say, oh, I'm Keaton Mitchell. What the hell's going on? Or John Harbaugh used Mitchell. No, this was all explainable and all expected leading up to this game last night.
Yeah, and our upcoming guest, Rich Maletto, I saw him on Twitter going at someone saying, what the hell are you talking about? People were playing this guy. I said not to play this guy. I pinned a tweet or whatever it was. We were pretty resounding in our concern with Mitchell being a thing at fantasyguru.com. We've all said it. And I think you laid it out well. His role grew. The touches were there. The snaps, like everything, nothing happened. You're in an offense it's not a great offense for pass catchers. It never has been. Guys out of the backfield, they're not catching a lot of passes from Lamar Jackson. He needs to have that be part of his game because, as we saw last night, the goal line is Gus Edwards. And, by the way, Gus Edwards still played more. He still played more snaps, and he actually ran more routes than Mitchell. So they're not even really using Mitchell as so last night is the Mitchell experience. And those people that thought he was going to be a league winner, I mean, again, we said it. He needs to rip off a 50-yard touchdown run. He needs to do that in order to live up to
him for the moment. You're playing him for the moment. You're not playing him for the game.
No.
It's the moment, Ray. That's the kind of player he is right now.
Yeah. And a lot of people have said this guy's a league winner. A lot of people said blow your budget to Adam, all this kind of stuff. And again, I've said it. Jeff Mann said it. Rich said it. Like, where is this coming from? Like, he's an undersized, undrafted guy that flashes. And he can be a very important part of an offense, and he can have big plays, and he's great for the Ravens, but that's different than being someone that you want to play in the fantasy game. He's a flex option that's either going to get you 5 points or 15 points. Is that really where your team is? You don't have a better option to get you 12 points every week at the
I think a lot of teams are in that spot, right?
Well, again, maybe, but that I think speaks to not being active enough throughout the season because Mitchell's just not a good play.
I'm in a league. I think I'm playing you in this league, Ray. Where this week, we have 2 flexes in that league, and I've got Rico Dowdle in there.
Well, that's 2 flexes.
Still, that's horrendous. Rico Dowdle. I got like 6 dudes on bye. So that's
79 yards and a touchdown last week, Kyle. Come on.
Yeah, he did. If I can just get another 50 points out of the Cowboys this week, I may be able to pull that off again. 34-20, Ravens top the Bengals, and we are off in week 11. Let's take a deeper look at week 11, shall we? Joining us now, a man who work you have definitely been following at fantasyguru.com, whether it's of the football variety, the NASCAR variety, whatever variety. This guy is kind of a jack of all trades. Rich Maletto is with us here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Rich, welcome in. I love it. We should note, Rich is not driving.
No. I am parked. I promise I am parked in a little cubbyhole here.
We appreciate it, Rick. Great to see you. Thanks for pulling away for a few minutes to kind of preview week 11. Ray and I disagree on this Burrow thing. He's upset. I'm not. Are you upset with the Bengals for not telling us if something were going on with Joe Burrow's wrist?
Kind of. I'm kind of pissed off at all the NFL teams right now. Arthur Smith makes a joke like, people that just want drama. You knew you weren't going to be playing a guy. Like, I understand these NFL coaches don't really give a crap about our fantasy teams. That's not their job to. But let's be real honest about something. The NFL didn't see a decrease in sports fandom like we've seen a whole bunch of other sports, in large part because of fantasy sports. Sports gambling has taken off. We see the leagues promoting sports gambling. And my problem is, there's all these employees among these teams, all right? So let's just look at the Falcons. There was trainers, there was management staff. They all knew what was going on with Bijan Robinson. What's stopping them from calling a buddy, a friend, a family member, and letting them know, hey, heads up, this is going on? And when we hear about people writing into Jeff saying they won 60 grand on a contest or 8 grand on a bet, things like that, that's significant money. So you're basically poo-pooing on the fans that support you. You're kind of bringing in, from my perspective, integrity as far as the betting aspect and this fantasy aspect. And you want to be like, oh, it's just drama. I don't understand these coaches' angle because I don't think that any team is changing their entire game scheme because, oh my gosh, we just saw Joe Burrow in a wrist bandage. That's it. Completely changed the game. We're running 11 people in the box. I mean, this is ridiculous. I don't understand why it's so bad to have your professionals. People are choosing to watch a professional sport. This isn't college. This isn't high school. You should be sharing the info. And I know Howard Bender talked about it on the show. He happened to mention the brace. My wife mentioned it to me right before the game started. I had no idea. Between the writing and traveling, answering questions, I didn't hear any of it. Then I see him talking about it on the game, and it's like, what are we doing? And then afterwards, Zach Taylor's all, oh, yeah, there was nothing. Well, then why was something on his wrist? Like, you're outright lying to my face and expect me to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's no problem. Like, I'm really upset with it. Ever since they changed the injury designation, which was going to make it better, it's actually gotten worse. And I think something needs to happen. We don't have any beat reporting. We got beat reporters that actively admitted to misleading or not sharing information because the team didn't want them to. We've got teams that think it's a joke to just crap on fans, and I understand they don't care about fantasy, but it's helping support your career. Be honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't get any valid info? Come on.
Skip Bayless, we thank you for joining us today.
Sorry.
That was pretty good. That actually made sense, unlike Skip Bayless sometimes, who goes off.
He's on your side, Ray. So,
yeah, he
so
is. Rich is a smart
here.
guy. I knew it. Rich, let's talk about another scenario. This one has an injury. We know there's an injury, and so let's adapt to it. That's the Browns situation. They've lost Deshaun Watson with the shoulder issue. We thought it was going to be P.J. Walker. It's not going to be P.J. Walker. It's going to be DTR under center. We know they're going to try to funnel things through the ground attack, right? We know that. We've seen that recently. We'll see that continue. What do we do with the pass catchers, and specifically Amari Cooper with the Browns? How do you prognosticate his value moving forward with the uncertainty at quarterback?
I may be overreacting on Cooper. I've been really mulling this over as I'm working on the Start Sit article today and looking at Jeff's rankings and everything. Here's my problem. We saw it once this year, and it was really bad, like really, really, really bad. However, come to find out, DTR didn't even know he was really going to be starting until the day of the game. So when you talk about lack of preparation and working with these guys and the chemistry, I don't think it's fair that we turn around and say, yep, he can't use Cooper at all. All right. That being said, I am still bringing Cooper way down because there was nothing I saw in that first game from DTR that has me excited to approach the passing game. I think you probably can still use Njoku. I was excited to have Njoku with Walker in there. I'm hoping it's kind of the same with DTR. We see some young quarterbacks look to the middle, the short routes. I'm with you, Ray. I think we're probably going to see more Ford in the passing game than we've anticipated. And the Steelers can be beat with running backs. I mean, they don't give up a ton, but they tend to over pursue. You can neutralize Cam Hayward and some of that ground game defense with some of the dump offs to the backs and the tight ends. So I have a little faith there, but I think at this point I've moved Amari Cooper down to a wide receiver 3 for me for the week.
Talk with Rich Maletto here about week 11. Rich, wide receiver position, let's stay with that discussion. Deebo Samuel, Davante Adams. These two guys were drafted to be wide receiver 1s. They have had moments this season, but overall obviously disappointing. Deebo's got his quarterback. Adams doesn't have his. What are your thoughts on Deebo Samuel and Davante Adams this week? I assume you're just going to say they still are must starts, but I think even people hearing that, they get very nervous because they don't look at these guys as must starts.
I think expectations are something we've got to do a better job in fantasy in general. Like, just because they're not living up to wide receiver 1 expectations doesn't mean their failures are not usable, right? I heard you earlier talking about, I think it was on yesterday's show on the radio, Adams slots into that wide receiver 2-ish range for you. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, how many of us aren't starting all the wide receiver 2s we have, right? I mean, I don't know why you would want to drop down to a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 type level if you have these guys out of more than just its spite. They're not living up to expectations, so I'm not using. So you're 100% right as far as where I stand. They're both must starts for me. They're both wide receiver 2s in that range. It's hard for me to suggest playing Deebo over Adams, even with the way Adams has looked over recent history. I am a little concerned on the rookie quarterback, especially with the total yards. Pierce has got them playing kind of an older school type of football thing. We're seeing more Jacobs, so the passing volume's not there. I might lean Deebo over Adams, for start sit type of thing this week, but they're right next to each other, and I really don't want to be sitting either of them.
You mentioned that start sit column, Rich, and it'll be out later today at fantasyguru.com. This one's going to sound crazy, but I wonder if there's any legitimacy to it because we got millions of players, so somebody's probably thinking this. Josh Allen. Things are bad for the Bills, and now they have the Jets. New offensive coordinator. Should anybody be considering a benching of Josh Allen as their QB this week?
I caution everybody before they start getting mad if you know football and watch the game, you see bad play. We see it with Jordan Love. We see it with Josh Allen right now. Check your fantasy points before you just start assuming sitting somebody. I mean, Josh Allen is still, depending on your league, anywhere from QB1 to, if it's real heavy on turnover points, negative points, to like QB3. Why on earth would you even consider not starting a QB1 or 3? Like overall, I'm not talking tiers here. Like overall QBs out there, he's first, second, or third. There's no way that I'm benching that for anybody. I don't care what their name is, and I don't care what you guys talked about it a minute ago, especially you, Kyle. forget this whole matchup nonsense. We get way too creative on the matchups. And if you think that's smart, go look at the DFS contests that win every week. There is always one or two jobbers in somebody's lineup that had a terrible matchup that you're like, why would you use them? And they ended up being the reason they won the contest. We overplay coaches know the matchups too. You don't think they adjust? Like, we overplay the whole matchups thing, in my opinion.
Rich, we talked about Mitchell with the Ravens, and I mentioned the fact that you were anti-Mitchell for the reasons that we were too. Let's shift things over to a similar type of player who's likely to return this week. It's Davante Adams with the Dolphins. Mostert obviously is, Mr. Touchdown, kind of like Mr. Edwards. He's Mr. Touchdown. He hasn't necessarily done a lot of great things on the ground overall the last couple of weeks. The Dolphins are content at times to run the ball 18 times and not really establish the run. How are we looking at, assuming Achane is active? Oh, there he is. Did we lose Rich? Oh, Rich is back.
I'm here.
How do we anticipate the breakdown being this week? Achane and Mostert. We're all starting Mostert. Should we be starting Achane?
I'm using Achane. I have been calling Mitchell Achane light, right? I mean, very kind of similar size game. That said, these are very different offenses. Very, 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 very different offenses. Very different ways the offenses attack the defenses. I don't think Achane is going to be that 15-touch guy. But the way the Dolphins use him, look, we were using him as a 7-10 touch guy before the injury. So I guess from my perspective, I'm going right back to what I was using before. I think we need to be a little bit temper expectations here. The 70-point game that everybody wants to remember, is a bit of a farce, so to speak. But personally, I think especially as bad as running back has been, I can't see Achane being any lower than, say, a low-end RB2 for me for the week.
Devin Singletary. What do you do with him? I mean, he's
that's
been
a tough one.
Dreadful, Rich, all year, but last week he went off. Houston has Arizona. It looks like Dameon Pierce is going to be out. Noah Brown could be out too, by the way. Singletary, is he a top 20 running back this week? I almost feel like he has to be, just because the field is littered with nobodies.
Here's the thing. If Pierce is out, I don't know how you can't have Pierce say in the top 25. At the very least, top 30, right? I mean, I think that's being even way over the top conservative, especially at running back. You have to look at volume and chase it. I get Achane isn't kind of that, but like I said, he's kind of the one unicorn, so to speak. I hate that term. It's overused, but he's kind of very unique and different in that way. Singletary looked terrible even with the volume 2 weeks ago, to your point, Kyle. And then last week was totally different. As a general rule, I prefer to count on the volume and take my licks as they come. If I only get 5 or 7 points, at least I played a guy that got 15 touches. If Pierce is out, I think you've got to slate Singletary in as at least an RB2 flex at the very, very low end.
Rich, let's ask you a question about the tight end position. We lost Mark Andrews last night. Isiah Likely is the guy we anticipate stepping in there. Kyle and I were briefly mentioned the fact that there's a lot of solid options at the tight end position, right? Not necessarily superstars, but a lot of solid options. And you get names. I'm looking at our rankings over at fantasyguru.com. You got Musgrove, Pat Freiermuth is returning. Okonkwo, we're still hoping maybe Albert O does something. Number one, is there a tight end you've identified this week as this guy's standing out? And secondly, what are your thoughts on Freiermuth? Because I've seen multiple people pick him up. Wasn't really part of the offense early on. Didn't do anything early on. Had multiple injuries. But some people, I guess, are desperate this week, and they're going with Pat F.
So I like Musgrave still. He's been getting, the tight end's been crappy, right? But Musgrave is getting that 4, 5, 6 types of targets a game, just like all the other ones we're counting on. If you get the touchdowns, if you get the yards, you're fine. I'm not real impressed with now I'm getting tongue-tied on Chiggy. Well, Pickett. I want no part of Pickett. I mean, we can address Freiermuth. I'm avoiding Freiermuth. I had to activate him off of IR, and it's ironic. It's a very crappy team I'm in a rebuild with, and I threw him in on the, back into the active roster. I'm like, I'm not using him. I've got no desire to use him. I mean, Connor Hayward actually filled in pretty well, right? And it was nothing. So, and I'm with you, Ray. I've heard you talk about Ray on Pickett a few times. Look, I was kind of on an island going into last year saying avoid Pickett. I want nothing to do with him. I think he's a bust. I don't think the Steelers can draft a quarterback well. I don't think they do a good job evaluating quarterbacks. I want nothing to do with him. And this offense is atrocious without him. I think you've been spot on with your take on this entire offense. So the one tight end, and he played last night. He was in my streamer article, but the one tight end I've kind of flagged and eyeballing was Hudson. Over the last 3 weeks now with last night's game, he's getting that consistent tight end targets that you're looking for, and nobody's really looking at him. Now, that said, that was with Burrow. I don't know. I need to reevaluate the whole thing with Browning at quarterback. Browning obviously had a little bit of a connection with Irwin. I'm not shocked. Backup coming in, throwing to kind of the guys he's throwing with in practice. That's probably going to evolve and change a little bit. But, I mean, it was scary to see how little Chase was used. He's still the best receiver on the field. So, tight end, I mean, if it's not Logan Thomas and Jonnu, who I keep still seeing widely available, Musgrave is widely available, I'll go that route. I really don't want to get into Chiggy at Tennessee. Maybe if Levis starts turning it on, we can reevaluate that. I'm out on Freiermuth. I don't want anything to do with the Steelers' passing offense. I'm surprised at how much Njoku's been dropped and picked up. He's another one. But, they're all kind of the same, right?
It's like pick a guy and stick with a guy for a few weeks. I think everybody wants to jump week to week, and you end up chasing, you end up probably failing at that position. Rich Maletto never fails. Again, coming up later today, fantasyguru.com start sit column. He's in Discord a lot. Earlier in the week, by the way, he's got some streamers. If you look at the articles section in fantasyguru.com, he's got a weekly streamers column. Buy, sell, cut is a weekly column. So Rich does a lot of stuff, helping us out as we get you set each and every week. Rich, we appreciate you stopping on board here. Great to see you, man. Take the hands off the wheels, get back to work, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thanks, guys. Have a great one.
Rich Maletto joining us here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Great to hear from him. Start, sit, Ray. One thing we didn't get to that I want to hit on, Justin Jefferson. Sounds like there's a chance he could be back this week. Problem there, Ray, we got a Monday night game or a Sunday night game. So Minnesota's at Denver, and it's real. And maybe we'll hear positive news. Maybe it comes out today, maybe tomorrow if he travels with the team and it sounds like he's going to dress. But that could be a really difficult decision come Sunday morning if he's still kind of listed as questionable, or if we hear, he's going to go through pregame workouts. Like, he is such a stud, Ray, that if you run the risk of waiting around on Sunday to get the news, it could truly burn you. But my gosh, if we know he's in your fantasy lineup too.
Yeah, that's a really interesting situation right here now. As we said early on a Friday morning, we have the unknown with Jefferson being back. We have the unknown with Osborne being back. We've got a new quarterback in Josh Dobbs. We've got the unknown with Madison and how the backfield's going to go. Like, there's a lot there. So let's hope that by the time Friday's over, we have a much better handle on this, because it could end up being a scenario where with all these question marks that we end up getting a result absolutely different than we anticipate, where people end up kind of getting stuck too, Kyle. So let's hope we get that clarification, because there's a lot of pieces that we're juggling right now.
A few other things to follow as we go through this Friday. Noah Brown, I mentioned him. He's got a knee issue, did not practice on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. So that's a guy coming off, 330 yards in the last 2 games. So that's an important thing to follow. Doesn't sound like Dameon Pierce is going to be out there for the Texans. They're taking on Arizona this week. Let's see. Tyler Lockett was not practicing yesterday, hamstring injury. Antonio Gibson dealing with a toe problem, DNP on Thursday. Same thing for Gerald Everett with a chest issue. Chicago's backfield, Ray Khalil Herbert back in full, but now Donta Foreman. He's the issue. He's limited. And again, we run into such issues at running back. If you own Foreman, if you own Herbert, it's difficult for me to say bench one guy, play the other guy. I don't know how it's going to work for the Bears. But I think for a lot of people, you just run the risk and you send them both out there and you hope both guys get 10 to 12 touches, I think.
Yeah, the offense obviously transforms with Justin Fields under center, and it's very different. Fields is a quote-unquote risk to the running backs right near the goal line, just like Jalen Hurts can be for his guys in Philadelphia. I hope we get clarity here, too. I do know that Herbert's a more dynamic running back. He's more versatile than Foreman. He's had a lot of success last year, and even this year he was trending upwards when the injury occurred. So I'm more in the Herbert game than the Foreman game, certainly long-term. This week, we still need some more information to make the determination.
Got a full week of coverage here at full weekend, I should say, at Fantasy Guru. Loads of columns have been going up all week long. DFS position by position, some of the guys that we truly like going into week 11. Of course, Jeff will have his big drop on Saturday with some of his favorite DFS calls for the week. Ray's got a giant column that's out. Armando's got a huge column looking at the weekend. Tyler Beaker has the kind of the game script column that is a must read every Sunday. So if you're getting set DFS full season, whatever it is, fantasyguru.com, do check it out for the weekend. Of course, additionally, this weekend, we've got some college football. That picks up on Saturday. Joining us now here on FSD, Fantasy Sports Daily, Chris Rose is with us to talk a little college football. Chris, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, man. Good afternoon. I see you guys are talking a little bit of Vikings, so you guys warmed my heart that before coming on.
Trying to warm your heart. Are the Vikings going to make a run? You think there's a playoff berth with Josh Dobbs under center?
Man, I'll tell you what, Josh Dobbs brings that intensity, something different that we haven't seen, since can I go back to Tavares Jackson with that mobility? So, I mean, it's been quite a few years since we've had some electricity in that stadium. It's great to watch, and just seeing Joshua Dobbs get that chance is awesome.
Let's talk some college football. You and the crew later tonight. We'll have the live stream 9 o'clock looking at week 12. I mentioned this to Ray. It kind of snuck up on me, Chris, that Caleb Williams, who everybody assumes will be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL next year, if he comes out, it sounds like he will, but tomorrow could be his last game in college football. It's their last game of the regular season. You'd have to expect if he's going pro, he's probably not in a bowl game. USC against UCLA. Williams is popular every week. Is he popular to you? Is he paid off this year? I mean, the team, they got 3 or 4 losses. It's been a disappointment. How's Williams look this season?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's always like a question mark for me, whether to pay up for him, whether not to pay up for him. For me, I'm just going to prioritize other quarterbacks over him. There's other guys in better spots as far as a DFS standpoint. I think it's going to be a good game. I think there's some narrative behind it, so I get it. But it's also tough to stack Caleb Williams. There's like 5 or 6 really, really good wide receivers who I think are all probably pro running wide receivers in that offense. So for me, if I'm going to play a quarterback, I want to prioritize it where I can stack with a wide receiver. And Caleb Williams, just the way he spreads the ball, I really haven't had that opportunity to play him this year. And UCLA, they have a sneaky good defense. So I just don't see him paying off that price tag this week.
That USC game against UCLA, part of the early slate, which locks at 12 noon over at DK. It's also, I think, part of the 3:30 slate if you want to focus on that. Biggest game probably tomorrow is also in the Pac-12. Washington taking on Oregon State. I think DFS players, Chris, they're fairly familiar with the Huskies and what they can do. How about Oregon State? I don't know if they've snuck up on people, but DFS-wise, do the Beavers have much to talk about going into this game tomorrow?
Yeah, I think we've seen DJ Uiagalelei really take a step forward, going into that Oregon State defense. They're facing a Washington defense that's 364th in the nation against quarterbacks. Damian Martinez coming off a 4-touchdown, 146-yard game. He's been really good. And then the wide receivers, Silas Bolden, Jack Velling are guys that you can kind of stack with DJ. I think it's going to be a really good game. And then on the other side, of course, you have Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, and Michael Penix, who as a Vikings fan, I'm kind of hoping that Penix falls to Minnesota. I just think he's been absolutely phenomenal this year, just spreading the ball, especially with losing one of their, Jalen McMillan, who's probably one of their, I would say he's their number 1 receiver. Losing him, Penix has still looked good. So I think on paper, this is a really good game, really good night slate game, and you can play both sides here.
Yeah, that Washington team still fighting to get into the playoff, too. They're currently number 5, so this is a huge game for them as they try to sneak into the top 4. Chris Rose hanging out with us, talking college football week 12. One of the teams that is in the top 4 is Michigan. We've got all the Jim Harbaugh stuff going on. Didn't matter last week. They took care of Penn State. They play in the early slate, 12 noon kickoff against Maryland. And I was looking at the Terrapins. They gave up 51 points, Chris, to Penn State. And Penn State doesn't have much of an offense. Michigan, I mean, are they going to roll? Is this a 50-point spot for the Wolverines, you think, tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so. JJ McCarthy, Corum, Roman Wilson. I think this is all a good spot for all 3 of those guys. This is an interesting stack, probably one that's going to be lower owned just because of the lopsidedness of this game. If Baby Tua can put some points up for Maryland, this could be a really interesting game stack where you can play both sides. But for me, I think McCarthy is a really good spot. And then Roman Wilson, who we've seen him put up several games where he's put up multiple touchdowns, and he's still pretty cheap.
Yeah. You mentioned that early slate, 12 games, so it's a biggie, and it does include some of the 3:30 games. In that 3:30 slot, we have Georgia, Tennessee. It's also Showdown available if you want to just play that game between the Bulldogs and the Volunteers. Any names that you like for people if they're playing Showdown? Are any of the slates looking at UGA against Tennessee?
Yeah, probably McConkey is probably my favorite play in this game. But for me, if this is just going to be a showdown slate, it's one of the games that I'd rather watch and of course root for Tennessee to knock off Georgia, kind of how they did Alabama last year. But it's really, DFS wise, it's a tough game because both offenses are kind of up and down. I think Joe Milton's another. Of course, if you're going to play, you're going to play Joe Milton and kind of run it back with McConkey there.
Yeah, big game between the Bulldogs and the Volunteers. That game in Knoxville, so maybe the biggest test that Georgia has had this season, taking on the Volunteers there. I was looking at prices for this week, Chris, and of late, I don't know why, but I've stumbled on some Clemson Tiger football. I could care less about Clemson, but I just stumbled upon it. Watch it on a Saturday. Phil Maffa, the running back, I was looking at his price for tomorrow, and it's like $5,700. And the dude, the last 3 weeks, I looked it up, about 70 carries and over 400 yards rushing. $5,700 against North Carolina. Is it cheap? Is it fair? Is he somebody to consider? Because a lot of the other running backs are more expensive. What do you think of Phil Maffa?
Yeah, Maffa in that game against Notre Dame had 36 carries, filling in for Will Shipley. And of course, Will Shipley, if you're going to look at both price tags, Shipley's only $200 more. He only had 11 carries last week, but he still put up 77 yards and a touchdown. On the other side, Maffa did have the majority of the carries. I think you could play both guys. If you need to save some money, I'd go to Maffa. He's probably going to get a majority of the carries. He'll probably get, again, probably 17 to 20 carries, while you'll see Shipley a little bit more involved in the passing game. But I think both guys are very interesting here.
Couple more questions, Chris. We always like looking at totals. And usually in college football, we get, multiple games in the upper 60s, sometimes 70s. Tomorrow isn't necessarily, there's a lot in the 50s and such, but nothing really jumps out except for LSU and Georgia State, which is in the 7:00 evening window. That game's over 70, and LSU is favored by more than 30 points. How popular should LSU be for that evening slate? Because that's a big number. It's a huge spread. They've got talent. Do you like to play the Tigers in that sort of setup?
Yeah, I think this game's over by the half. Guys like Jaden Daniels, I think he's only going to play a half here. I don't think they really have to play these guys more than that. Logan Diggs is doubtful in this game, the running back, so we may see a mix of Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson, Noah Cain. I think you could play Josh Williams here in this spot. I think it's a good spot for him to get some in-game reps behind Logan Diggs. There is a little bit of narrative here. Malik Neighbors has a chance to break LSU's all-time record in career receiving yards. So I think he's like 284 yards shy of that. He has 2 weeks to break that. I think you're going to see Jaden Daniels kind of feed him the ball and break that record. Just a good game to really do that against a lower Division I school and Georgia State really hasn't played well over the last couple games. If you're looking for someone to play in that game, Darren Granger, dual threat quarterback who has been good on his legs, just hasn't really been good with passing. But he's a guy. If you're going to try to get some exposure to that, is the guy to really target there.
Chris going to be part of our college football live stream later tonight, 9:00. They do it every Friday night. Wonderful job to kind of get you set for Saturday. Of course, Discord is hopping on Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon. Chris and the rest of the guys, Russell, Mike, all those guys helping you out with decisions. Any news breaks, they're going to let you know in Discord. Cheat sheets will be out, all that stuff coming up tomorrow. In closing, Chris, and I know tonight you guys will dig deep on this with some of your favorite stacks, but is there an overlooked stack anywhere on the Saturday set of games? Is there a team that you think is going to be too under-owned that people can maybe take advantage of with a stack?
So I'll give you 3 teams that I'm looking at to kind of build my lines around. Number 1 being James Madison. If you look at what Jordan McLeod's done over the last 3 games, 11 touchdowns at the quarterback position, and then the wide receivers are just unbelievably underpriced. Reggie Brown, Elijah Surratt, they both went off last week. McLeod throws them. They get targeted 8 to 10 times a game. So those are the 3 guys that are going to be in my core for this week. Then again, the other 2 teams is a game stack here with Houston and Oklahoma State. Donovan Smith, Joseph Manjack, Samuel Brown, the Houston side. Then the Oklahoma State side, Alan Bowman, Ollie Gordon, who really had issues in the rain last week against UCF. I think it's a good bounce back spot for him here. Rashad Owens and Brendan Presley are the guys that I'm targeting in that game.
I like it a lot. Folks, if you're looking for more insight and a way to enjoy your Saturday, believe me, it's a lot of fun with multiple slates, a lot of games going on, tons of action. And unfortunately, we're nearing the end of the season. I think we got this week, next week, and then we're into championship week for the conference play. So really only 2 full weeks to go with all these games going on. Chris, awesome stuff. Good to have you on the live stream. Welcome to the pod. We'll do it again, and have a great weekend, okay?
Thank you very much. Have a good week.
Chris Rose hanging out with us on Fantasy Sports Daily. Cannot promote it enough. Later tonight, if you're looking for a college football edge, looking to win some cash in DFS, check those guys out at 9 o'clock. Ray Flowers back with us. Ray, we should also mention before we get out of here for the weekend, the all-in NFL package that we got available. Kind of a new deal that we got this week, right?
Yeah, it's a great deal. And for anyone that's interested in this, it's $100 rest of the way, everything football. When I say rest of the way, all the way through the Super Bowl, you get seasonal and DFS. So whether you're playing either version of fantasy football, you're covered through the rest of the season, through the Super Bowl. It's the all-in package. You want to use the promo code FSD20. We'll put a link below on YouTube. And if you go to the website, you click the Join Now tab in the top right and just sign up for that. It gets all the DFS, all the seasonal. It includes coaching breakdowns, running back grids, red zone information, wide receiver, cornerback matchups. You get access to Discord 24/7 to ask all those questions. So again, $100 for the all-in package, all the football you want, all covered, seasonal and DFS over at fantasyguru.com with the promo code FSD20.
You mentioned getting answers in Discord. We also provide answers here on FSD. I know David earlier asked me for some defensive team streamers. And again, every league's different. I don't know who's owned and who isn't. You got bye weeks, and so defenses are getting dropped. Defenses that might be available, and I like their matchup this week. Pittsburgh, Detroit, Miami, Washington, Jacksonville, Houston, Buffalo. I like all their matchups there. So that's going to be, 7 teams? Hopefully at least 1 or 2 of those is available. And that's the other side of the coin here, Ray. When all these QBs are hurt, it becomes much easier to play defensive bingo every week. So.
You used to do this all the time. For those people that are new and don't remember this, this used to be one of Kyle's things. And I've seen it mentioned a couple of times in comments here, Kyle. You might need to resurrect this.
I'm a big fan. And it works. It's one of my few strategies, Ray, that works. A lot of my others don't, but that one worked. Let's see. Hal is wondering, Najee Harris, Ty Chandler. We should note Madison was limited yesterday. Concussion protocol, Ray, that the usual is that you're out for a week.
Right.
Now, Brock Purdy kind of turned that reasoning on its head a few weeks back. I would suspect, let's just play this as if Madison is out. Madison, Najee Harris, what's your take there?
If Madison is out, I would start Chandler over Harris. Obviously, if Madison is in, it would go the other direction. I think the Steelers, we've talked about this earlier in the week. They want to establish the run. It's their identity of their offense at this point. I don't know how successful they're going to be at it this week. I would be interested in going with Chandler. Again, we talked about this earlier too. We still aren't certain about Jefferson. We're still not certain about Osborne. We're still not certain about Madison. So it's really tough to make the call now. Even if we say Madison's out and Chandler's in, it's tough to know what the offense is going to look like. But if I had to prognosticate it all out, I would say Chandler slightly ahead of Harris on a Friday morning.
I think I'd go Najee in that one. I think Pittsburgh is just going to be running crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think both Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are getting 12 to 15 carries.
I think that's fair.
If not more touches. So I kind of like Najee Harris, at least for me. Defense is tough, though, against Cleveland, certainly. But I kind of give the edge to Harris. A little more of a known quantity, I think, on that one. To finish off a discussion we had yesterday, MVP, Shohei Ohtani, American League, unanimous. And also unanimous for Ronald Acuna in the NL. I'm not surprised Acuna won, but every single first place vote went to Ronald Acuna yesterday.
Yeah, and I mentioned this yesterday on the show, and I said I hope it's not 20. It should be 27-3 or something, and it wasn't. Like it. I'm not shocked, but yeah, I don't. Disappointed is the right word. I'm kind of disappointed that not one person, not necessarily a Dodger writer either, just someone didn't say, hey, because again, the value of these guys, offensively with the bat in his hands, Betts was just about as good as Acuna. He didn't steal as many bases and he wasn't as sexy or exciting, but, he was a very good player, played all those positions. I think the right guy won. I'm just surprised by the margin that he won.
We are still waiting for baseball's hot stove league to actually light up. It's been very slow, as expected, I think, in the early going. We did get a trade yesterday, a 5-for-1 trade where the one was Aaron Bummer. Aaron Bummer, Ray, was worth 5 guys. The Braves gave up 5 guys to get it. Aaron Bummer's ERA was like 8. last season.
No,
It was really
6.8, Kyle. Don't get 6.8.
Much better than I gave him credit for. And Mike Soroka, I guess the Braves just gave up on him.
This is really interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting one because Bummer, the ERA wasn't indicative of how he pitched. He's a very solid left-handed reliever who gets strikeouts and grounders. He's a very good addition for a Braves team. But the cost seems high, and I think it basically comes down to all the beat writers said they wanted to keep Nicky Lopez, but they weren't going to pay him $4 million. Okay, fine. He's kind of a spare piece. It's really fascinating to see Schuster and Soroka also in this deal. Like you said, these are guys that at various points, this 2023, the Braves were telling us we're going to be part of their rotation. So, it came down to them, I guess, not wanting to spend the money. It came down to them needing spots on the 40-man roster. But this actually seems like a pretty good deal for the White Sox. They at least gave themselves some options, and they need them desperately.
A couple of last things. Do I like the Jets this week? Yes. You like the Jets every week. And you got a quarterback that turns the football over. So, yeah, Jets defense is good. And I did mention Washington, the Commanders against the Giants. I know somebody was wondering if the Commanders, they were one of my 7 teams that I mentioned there. Okay, Ray, chock full, man. We didn't get the hockey today, but Ray and I are both wearing hockey gear, interestingly enough. Ray's got his Ovechkin.
Yep.
I wanted to make sure that Ray didn't bully me today. Last night, his Sharks demolished my Blues. And the Sharks, they're one of the worst NHL teams we've seen in over a decade. And I think they won 5-0. It was ugly. So I wanted to make sure Ray didn't bully me around. So I got out the blue note.
Yeah. It was 5-1, Kyle. You guys got a goal there.
5-1. Okay. Yeah, there was that late goal. I'd fallen asleep by that point, I think. Ray, have a great weekend. Monday will be our big recap show. I think we'll have Ryan Clifford with us to preview the huge showdown on Monday night, Philadelphia and Kansas City. So we'll get going at 11 a.m. Eastern next Monday. Ray, enjoy a couple of days, not of rest because it's football season, but we'll talk again on Monday, okay?
Looking forward to it. And use that promo code, folks, FSD20 over at fantasyguru.com.
We will see you Monday. It is Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.